this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and it's talking about eating disorders, and I try to do this about at least once a year, usually twice a year, in hopes of maybe one person can, that's out there that may be suffering from an eating disorder that doesn't really know how severe it can get or what to do about it. So I'm seeing me some very seasoned people on the screen that really could actually probably do this lecture themselves. They know probably as much about it from the inside out. So what I want to start with is there's three major eating disorders, and then there's others off of these three major ones. But there's anorexia, and of course, anorexia is self-starvation. It is eating, it's the desire to be thin. And I'll talk more about it in a minute. But anyway, I want to just tell you that anorexia is one. And then bulimia, and a lot of times it is people will practice bulimia and anorexia together, sometimes not, sometimes it's separate. And then compulsive overeating or binge eating, they finally put it in the diagnostic tool as binge eating. They have really never claimed that obesity, or they claim it's a disease, but they don't give it the credence that I'm just saying they, and I believe that's really the medical profession. They don't give it the, I don't believe, real focus that they do on anorexia. Now, in between, there are other forms of ways that people can practice eating disorders. One of them is chewing and spitting. And we've had people, and it becomes a real big problem where they will maybe have had practiced, maybe they've been overweight before or have the fear of getting overweight. We have treated people in the media or the people that that have to keep their weight at a certain place, like flight attendants, actresses, all. So they do this chewing. They want that sensation of chewing, and they want the taste of the food, and then they spit it out. Now, the only time they come for and seek treatment is when they start swallowing too much, because after a while you will start swallowing, and then too it becomes, and you've heard me say this a lot, it's straight out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but what we think about is how we act, and how we act becomes a habit, and that habit becomes our character or who we are. So, like the spitting and chewing, what starts, and it starts with any eating disorder or any addiction, it starts with the thought. So the thought to use, it comes with the thinking. And then after the thinking is we act on it. We act on the thinking. And then when we act on the thinking over a period of time, it becomes a habit, and then that habit becomes who we are. It becomes a disease, it becomes our character. Everything that we're about centers around our addiction, when to use, how to get it, how to hide it, whether it's food, drugs, alcohol, you name it. But today I really want to focus on eating disorders. And I want to start with anorexia. And I will tell you, there's a lot of talk today about obesity, there's always talk about the overweight. There's talk, but not a lot of action of, a real plan of what people can do. And there's very few, we've been in this business 35 years, and there's been very few families that have ever done an intervention on a compulsive overeater, someone that is morbidly obese. They don't. But what they do is do interventions on an anorexic, when their weight gets compromised and they see them go down, down, down. It scares family members, and it's rightly so that it needs to scare them. And so they're the ones, the anorexics, that will a lot of times get help first because the disease is so visible. And so anorexia, and it doesn't always start in early teenage years or childhood. It can start later in life. But most of the time it does start in childhood. One of the things, we treated a young girl she's not old, but we've treated her many years ago. And so stress, a lot of times, stress can cause anorexia. And it can, any of the eating, doesn't really cause it, but it can get us into it. Stress, change, particularly for anorexia. Change is hard. So this young girl, they lived many states away. The father was a fireman. Mother worked outside the home. They had, just a modest ranch-style house, 3 bedrooms. They had an older daughter, and then they had a younger daughter, and then they had a son. So the 2 daughters shared a bedroom. And there was about 7 years difference between the girls. And that younger girl idolized her older sister. And the older sister was kind of a mini mother to her. The mom would be out working. And so anyway, nevertheless, the 2 sisters had a very close relationship. So the father had an aunt. We all would love to be rescued by a rich aunt or uncle. Well, they were. He had a very wealthy relative that died, and he inherited a lot of money. And the first thing they did was build a large home. It was 2 stories. It had all the bedrooms upstairs. On one end of the upstairs was the older daughter's bedroom. On the other end was the youngest. It looked like something wonderful had happened, and it had, but it was changed. And for this young girl, and by that time she was 13, which a lot of times that can be an age when anorexia starts. But what she did, she got in that bedroom at the other end of the floor, the top floor, and she missed her sister. She missed her sister. And her sister actually was enjoying having a room by herself. She never minded. Through the years, she knew that she had to share a room with her younger sister. She didn't mind that, but she was enjoying having a bedroom by herself. And what the younger girl did, she felt left out. She felt stressed. She didn't. So what happened is she stopped eating. And for anyone, particularly young people, to stop eating and then refusing to eat, and then the weight starts going down, that's the best way in the world to get parents' attention. That is the way. And that was back in the early years when we were treating adolescents, and that was probably 35 years ago. And so they brought her to us. Long story short, it was the stress of the mood, the stress of learning to live in a room by herself. And, that wouldn't have bothered some children. It wouldn't have bothered them at all. They would have loved to have had their own bedroom. But there are children who have sensitive little hearts. And when I think all children have sensitive little hearts, some more so than others. And so sometimes things will go directly to the heart of a child. And that's what happened with this child. And anorexia became a tool, and she didn't set out, she didn't know anything about anorexia, but she set out to just not eat. She did not eat, and then she started getting attention over not eating. And her sister got very concerned about her, and she would even spend the night in her bedroom. So by the time she got to us, her weight was very, very, very compromised. And so what we look for is change in the family. We look for stress. We don't, bring family members in. We do have a family week, and I think it's one of the biggest parts of what we do here. And we get our clients very ready to have family week. And we don't bring them in to make them bad or wrong. We bring them in so the client can begin to get their history straight, ask questions to the family. And so we had already we're pretty smart people, but anyway, we'd already figured out about the stress that was brought on by this young girl. And so, she's grown today. She has grown children, and, and she recovered from anorexia, but it was a cry for help. And now let's go to, and so anorexia is, it is a psychiatric diagnosis. It has the highest death rate of any psychiatric diagnosis that there is. And it is fatal. I mean, all eating disorders are primary diseases. They're progressive, they're chronic, and they're fatal left untreated. So anorexia and all three of the eating disorders have a preoccupation with food and a preoccupation with weight. Regardless of which end of the spectrum you're on, the anorexics have an abnormal preoccupation with not eating food and a preoccupation with the scales, the not eating. And then, some of the signs and symptoms of anorexia is wearing bigger clothes. They will wear baggy clothes. What we do here, and after they settle in for a while, we get them to wear fitted clothes, wear a belt. Not all, but majority of your eating, now do not leave this Zoom talk and say, well, Tennie said, because I'm not saying it, but majority, a high percentage of your eating disorder people have had some form of abuse in childhood. And there's 5 forms of abuse. There's the sexual abuse, and the sexual abuse can be, we think of it as something very, very severe. I'm sad to say there was a little 5-year-old in this town of Abilene, Texas, this week they still don't know if she was going to live, but she was raped, she was beat. Now that is severe abuse, severe. But sexual abuse can be varied. And so, many of our clients come in with sexual abuse, emotional abuse, intellectual abuse. Intellectual abuse is questioning a child's intelligence. And another one is spiritual abuse. And I can't think of the fourth one, but I'll think of it in just a minute. But there's 5 forms of childhood abuse. Many of your eating disorder clients, there's a high percentage that have had some form of sexual abuse. Now, I'm not saying all, so don't go say, well, she said everybody. That's not true. That's not what I'm saying. And that sexual abuse looks different. It's in different homes. It can be parents going around nude. That is sexual abuse to a child, because a child compares their body to a parent's body and they don't measure up, and it's confusing. And it's bathing with a child. It is showered with a child. It is having children exposed to parents having sex. It's about doing a lot of sexual jokes around a child. And then there is inappropriate touch. And then there is the actual penetration of having sex with the child. So it's across the spectrum. And I will tell you, it does not matter how many times, it doesn't matter what type of sexual abuse it is, it goes to the heart of the child. And what that tells the child is that there's something wrong with me. There is something wrong with me. And so not all of our eating disorder clients have been sexually abused, but many have. So anorexia then is that relentless pursuit to be thin. An anorexic is never thin enough. And it can be self-starvation. They can get into compulsive exercise, also laxative abuse, diuretic abuse. All three of the eating disorders can do this. But your anorexics are, a lot of times, an anorexic looks so cute, sweet, darling. Everybody wants to help an anorexic because they need help and they look helpless. Don't ever let that fool you. I've worked with many anorexics, and I've only been beat up twice in this field. I've been in the field over 45 years, and I've treated Vietnam vets, I've treated a hitman from the mafia, I've treated some badass people. But the two times I've been beat up have been by 70-pound anorexics. And I'm just glad they wasn't both at the same time, or I probably wouldn't be here. There's so much rage and anger inside an anorexic that when that is tapped into, they either hold it in the inside and break out in even more stress-related illnesses, or they blow it out on the outside through rage or, actually physical fighting. But they look so cute, precious, and darling. They look so, and staff sometimes will not overlove, but they'll overlook a lot and that's why we have to really work with our staff. They'll overlook many times what an anorexic does when they wouldn't dare do that with any, with someone that's within a normal weight range or one of our overeaters. So anyway, I'm through talking about that. Another thing is anorexia does not take long to get into. Where the compulsive overeating, morbid obesity, it takes years of overeating, day in, day out, overeating to get to morbid obesity, and by the way, what obesity is, used to, they told us, from 80 to 100 pounds overweight is obesity. Over 100 pounds overweight is morbid obesity. Today, they kind of go more by BMI, but overweight is overweight, and it is very dangerous, very, very dangerous. First time I saw the two words morbid obesity, I talked my mother into taking me to a diet doctor. I was 18 miles away from where we lived, and I'd heard somebody talk about this diet doctor, and I was very much overweight, and I was 13 years old. My mother was a drug addict, all that. Anyway, I drove us over there, 13, and he'd asked me some questions, and he wrote something across the top, kind of, like that, and then he went back to get me these pills. That's how he was going to treat my obesity, was with pills, a pill, but to take when you got up, and then it was to be, suppress the appetite, give me energy, I don't know. Anyway, diuretics, a box full of pills to give to a 13-year-old. But when he walked out, I turned that paper over, and across the top it said morbid obesity. I was probably 5 foot tall by then. I hadn't got my full height, which still isn't a whole lot. And at 13, I weighed 137 pounds and was diagnosed with morbid obesity. And I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe I had cancer. I had a real bad disease. Guess what? I did. But he didn't explain it to me. He just gave me a box of pills. So obese people, the overweight, are abused a lot. I won't get started on it, but they are abused a lot in our society, taken advantage of a lot, shamed a lot, put down a lot, made fun of a lot, bullied a lot. You can walk in a mall. I mean, when I weighed 287 pounds, I'd walk in a mall and be walking with my little kids. Other kids would come up and say, y'all have got a fat mama, or they'd say, why are you so fat? Or, cruel things, and not just kids, it'd be adults too. So anorexia, I'll get back to that, is the relentless pursuit of thinness. They can never get thin enough. And it is a deadly disease. Bulimia then is we treat eating disorders as an addiction, and people will ask me, well, what do anorexics get addicted to? I'll tell you what an anorexic gets addicted to. Your anorexic is much like, psychologically, is much like your street drug addict. Not your prescription drug addict, but your street drug addict. And if you took psychosocials and took the name and the disease of and put them side by side, a street drug addict and an anorexic, you could hardly tell one from the other. Because what happens is both an anorexic and a street drug addict know that what they're doing is going to lead to death. And they are willing to live on that razor's edge. Every time a street drug addict goes out into the community to secure the drug, they have to go places that are dangerous. They deal with dangerous people. They put their life on the line. But they are, filled 20 feet tall and bulletproof. And so they ride that fine line. That's part of the addiction, the getting away with, the securing the drug. And that's the same with anorexia. Anorexics I've worked with a lot of them, and when you get down into that compromised weight, the endorphins in the brain kick in. We have our own, dopamine, we have our own drugs inside our head. And so for anorexics, that kicks in. It kicks in big time, and they can feel 20 feet tall and bulletproof. I was telling my daughters last night, I was talking about doing this talk, or maybe it was Misty. I don't know who I was talking to about it. But anyway, while I was still at the Serenity House, which was a drug alcohol treatment center, we had started the eating disorder unit there and had it there for a year. And we had this very wealthy family bring their 30-something-year-old daughter in. She'd never been married. She was a severe anorexic. And she taught me a lot. What she taught me was that denial is don't even know we're lying. Denial is so strong with eating disorders, whether you're overweight or underweight. It's the denial. Well, I'm not that big, or I'm not that small. And so for an anorexic, they never get small enough. So I knew right off we were out of our league. Had just started the eating disorder unit there, and my experience of being around an anorexic was being in treatment. I had done some training, very little, and then having an anorexic daughter. That was my experience of anorexia. So I knew right off we were out of our league with this young woman, because her weight was so compromised, like 65 pounds. So this is where the family comes in. The family denial of an eating disorder person a lot of times is stronger than the client or the person themselves. Now, they may get them help, but a lot of times they won't let them stay in treatment because of the cost, or they will blame the treatment center that they're keeping them too long. So this young girl, we were out of our league. We had just learned about anorexia and bulimia. That was in 1985. There were very few treatment centers. There was no internet. There was none of that. And to tell you the truth, I went to the library and I got the librarian to help me. And I did some research, and I found a man up in New England that was an expert in treating eating he was a psychiatrist and a medical doctor, and he was an expert in treating anorexia. And he only took one patient at a time. His wife was a nurse. They had a beautiful home. They had it set up where they would keep the patient there, and they had to be, an adult, this woman was, and they would only take them on a year's commitment. You think that family would let her go? What they said was that I was getting a cut out of the money, and they would not let her go up to New England to work with a psychiatrist. That's the battle we face a lot of times with family members, to seeing the severity of the disease. So I want to tell you what happened to her. She was going to be a student teacher, and she was doing her student teaching, and they had to let her go because she was not appropriate. Her weight was so compromised. So she was in one of our big grocery stores here one day, and she fainted. They called an ambulance. They came and got her. And on the way, and when the ambulance people said her basket was full of laxatives, fleet enemas, juices, all kinds of eating disorder paraphernalia. And so when they got in the ambulance, she came to. And she came to saying, but I've ate today. I ate breakfast. She died before they got to the hospital. Now, this is the dangerous part of eating disorders, and no one wants to talk about it, particularly parents. They just want us to fix the kid or anyway, I'm preaching instead of sharing. I'm going to get back. Anorexia is one of the hardest to treat. And because the anorexic gets so much power and control, what I call it is the big C, it's control. They can't control what's going, or feel like they can't control what's going on in their life, but they can control what's going on in their mouth. Okay, so coupled with that is, and this is, like I said, not all the time, but sometimes you refeed an anorexic, which it takes time. You can't refeed them in 42 days. We're lucky if we get 42 days. It takes a good 6 months to a year to refeed an anorexic and bulimic. They don't want to stay longer. Insurance doesn't want to pay longer. The parents don't want to pay longer. My hope in life is that someday people will take this so seriously. Anyway, there's something on here. All right, so sometimes the anorexic will gain weight, or sometimes a person has never been anorexic. Maybe they've been a normal weight. Maybe they've gained a little weight. They want to get that weight off, and they've heard about bulimia. And so bulimia usually starts with, there again, wanting to lose a few pounds. Now, your bulimic a lot of times is going to be your drug addict, alcoholic. Your anorexic can too, but we don't see that as often. But bingo, your bulimic many times will be your drug addict, your alcoholic, and then they will get that lookism going, want to look a certain way, to be a certain size. Maybe they have been anorexic in the past. They do not want to gain an ounce, and so they will pick up bulimia. But a lot of it starts in school, kids or college teaching each other for however it happens. I know I practiced bulimia for 13 years, from 1972 to 1985. It is a down and dirty disease. It is one of the most dirty. And you have to do a lot to practice bulimia, and you have to clean up a lot, and it's costly. And not only do you pay money, like, if you're a laxative abuser, it takes a lot of laxatives, diuretics, it takes a lot. And you'll go to any length to get it. I would drive to Odessa, Texas, 165 miles from my home, to steal my father's water pills, Lasix, that he was taking for high blood pressure. I would steal them, and I would time it in such a way that I would know when that prescription would be full. I'd drive out there and get the bottle and come home, and then the doctor would blame it on maybe he has dementia, whatever. That is how desperate a bulimic gets. And so, anything to get that fluid out, to get the food out. Bulimia is what we get addicted to. What the anorexic gets addicted to is their own endorphins in their head, their head, and that feel of control. What the bulimic gets addicted to is what you do when you're bulimic. You overeat, and it's different. You don't just sit out the meal and overeat. After a while, you can do that, and they'll just automatically come up. I mean, we've had them to where they can't hold anything down. Their bodies are so trained to throw up food. But what a bulimic does, they have a set time. They'll go buy their binge food. They'll go buy their fix. And they'll make sure that they're alone, or they'll even go check themselves into a motel where they can be alone. And they will binge, and it's the timing. I hope I'm not teaching anybody how to be a bulimic, but anyway, it's all in the timing. So you overeat, that you binge on whatever. And most people binge on ice cream. They binge on things that are easier to get up. So, and it takes, the bigger the binge, are you hearing me? The bigger the binge, the bigger the release. And what a bulimic is going for, you get some numbing from overeating. When you overeat that many calories, I mean, you get full, and it just, for a few minutes, you just feel, that sense of ease and comfort. That immediately go up in your brain, and oh my God, I'm going to gain weight. And so the bulimic finds a way to get rid of it. You get over that porcelain throne, and you purge. And what a bulimic gets addicted to is the amount of food, but really what they get addicted to is the release of the food. That's when you get the sense of ease and comfort, the release of the food. And then you kind of come to out of that. I mean, you haven't completely passed out, but you get weak, it's awful. And so you look around and you see the mess you've made and the money. We've had clients, I say clients, well, me too, but anyway, we're talking about have had a $50, $75, $100 binge. Binges can be very expensive. But what they get addicted to is the release. I've never worked with a bulimic yet, or just about any eating disorder person, but particularly your bulimics have rage. And when they purge that food out, they're purging the rage out. And many times, like I keep saying, they will be your drug addict, prescription drug addict, alcoholic. And then, now the danger of bulimia is hitting a blood vessel, bleeding to death. It is having severe throat problems. It is, we could go on and on and on. I'll tell you an example. And I've had permission to share her story. We had this woman in that was engaged to the guy from Dallas. And she was a severe bulimic. We had family week. He was the only one that came. I knew there was a problem when he didn't want her folks to come for family week. He wanted it to just be him and her since they were getting married. So we didn't like that, but we can just control so much. But anyway, uh, he did family week, seemed like he got a lot out of it. And then when we ended it, we usually let clients go out for lunch with their family. And he made the announcement. He said, she needs to check out. I said, what? Yeah, she's checking out. I'm taking her home. What are you saying? Anyway, he did. He took her home. She would not stay once he made the decision for her to go home. So they drove to Dallas. Now, she had had her breakfast and lunch here. By the time they got to Dallas, it was time for dinner. And so he took her to the worst place that anybody could go, right out of treatment. Anyway, went to a Mexican food restaurant, encouraged her to eat whatever she wanted to eat. Well, she did. And then, and he told us that he said, I'll monitor her. So the story is he went to the bathroom, and women's bathroom in a big restaurant, stood outside the door to see if she was purging. And he couldn't hear her purging, so all was well. He had done his job. You can tell I'm still a little angry about this, but anyway, he had to stop for gas. And so they went to the filling station, and while he was pumping the gas, she had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, and she went and got the key, and then went to the bathroom, and she stayed, and she stayed, and she stayed, and he finished pumping the gas, and she was still in there. And so he kept banging on the door, and all of a sudden he saw blood coming out from under the door. She had purged so violently that it burst a blood vessel in her throat. The attendant got her out. They called the ambulance, blah, blah. They were able to sear that off and stop the bleeding. And she got her parents to bring her back here. She started her 42 days completely over, and she ended the engagement. But she could have died. That is the danger of bulimia. She could have died. Okay, so I get, and then we come to, and the bulimics can do over-exercise. They can purge on laxatives, diuretics, and then purging, and it is, some we get can purge up to 20, 30, 40 times a day. After a while, the purging can be just a reflex. I mean, put anything in your mouth, they'll throw it up. So and then that brings us to compulsive overeating. Compulsive overeating is, according to the National Institute of Health, only 15% of overweight people realize that they were obese. It is a hard deal to address, So, you look at the BMI, 30 to 34 is BMI is obese, 34 to 40 is morbidly obese, 80 to 100 pounds is obese. It is called obese. It is a medical, medical diagnosis. It's not, something that makes people bad, awful, and wrong. It means they have a disease. 2.8 million adults die each year from untreated, the results of untreated being overweight, being obese. And how they die, 44% die from diabetes, 23% from heart problems. There's actually, because the percentage of obesity is so much higher than anorexia, is that there is more death from obesity than any of the eating disorders. It is like all three. Obesity is a brain-related disorder, and all three can go back, not all the time, but it can be family related. Either some of the family has an eating disorder, or they can have, we get them to where all the family members are overweight. It is something that is in the family. And then when they come in, when the client comes in, they have gotten so bad, or they want treatment. And a lot of times they're not the largest in the family. They'll come in, and then we have family week, and here we'll have this many, very massive, 300 or 400 pound family members there. And the denial is so strong, they can't get past that they have the same disease that their loved one has. It's a tricky business to be in. All right, so let me see. I'm going to give you some hope. All three of the eating disorders affects all factors of our lives. It affects us mentally, it affects us physically and spiritually. And just losing the weight is not the answer, or just gaining the weight is not the answer. If you want to know how to lose weight, I always tell people, go to the corner, turn north, go 8 miles, turn left, go 2 blocks, there's Weight Watchers. That's a great place if that's all you want, is to lose weight. But if you have an eating disorder, it's much more than overweight or underweight. It is a mental and emotional disease that must be treated. And it is a physical disease, but you can't treat the mental and emotional until you treat the physical. Sometimes you can treat it alongside, but as long as a person is practicing an eating disorder, they can't I don't believe can treat the mental and emotional side. We've had lots of clients want to do that. And then, for all three, the bottom line is death. Any way you look at it, if you don't treat it, it's death. So, getting back to the obese, if a person is 100 or 150 pounds overweight, if they stay on a meal plan similar to ours, and our meal plan is not, it is a good meal plan, but it is a meal plan. It's not a diet. Diets don't work. We go on them to go off of them. It is a good meal plan. There's a lot of them out there, but if a person will stay and refeed themselves, take it as serious as an anorexic has to, if you're overweight, people will, in a year's time, you'll lose 100, could lose probably 100 pounds in a year staying on this meal plan, because you're going to lose a pound or 2 pounds a week, and then if you stay on it, sometimes you'll lose 3 or 4 or 5 pounds. Then the next week, maybe not any, but you'll average 1 to 2 pounds. So if you're 200 pounds overweight, give yourself 2 years. But if you do that, you're going to lose the excess weight. There is no failure to it, zero failure. The failure is, it's hard to do. It's probably one of the hardest things in the world. That's why people have made billions of dollars off of overweight people. I'm for anything that will help someone. The new thing out now is the shot. I have a friend here, Misty, and I have a friend here from California, and she said everybody that she knows is on the shot in California. You don't have to be morbidly obese. You can just go to the doctor and they'll give you the shot. And that's pretty true here too. It is supposed to be the end all and be all of weight loss. And if that works, but what my concern is what are the after effects? What's the long term? I don't know. But what the research has shown, the minute they stop taking the shots, they begin gaining the weight back if their food doesn't change. So bottom line, you're going to have to do something about treating the underlying causes and conditions and why you are using the food. So I'm going to tell you a few things that you can do, and y'all all know this, is one thing, I just said it, develop a healthy eating plan, whether you're anorexic, bulimic, or and if you're out there and you have a problem and you need help, if you seek a doctor for help, you make sure they've been trained in eating disorders. Very few of them have, and they'll tell you they get 8 hours at the most, and that's across the board. That's also for addictions, so be careful, ask the right questions. and it's not about just do you give the shot. It's about do they know how to treat eating disorders on every level. And you'll need a team. You need someone on the mental and emotional side. You need the medical people, and then you need a support group. And what we would say is a 12-step support group. A 12-step, there's Overeaters Anonymous, which includes bulimics and anorexia. And then there is Eating Disorder Anonymous. There is Food Addicts Anonymous. So there's quite a few of your 12-step programs that are food related. And I believe that is the secret to treating any addiction, is to get with like-kind people. And, they're not going to do it for you, but they're going to be on the journey with you. And, the relapse for eating disorders is high. It has a high rate. But don't stop going to meetings. Get in there, talk about if you've had a slip or a relapse, and get back on track. It's all about getting back on track. Okay, get enough physical activity, and that is 150, recommended 150 minutes a week. I don't want to say hours for those compulsive exercise. It's 150 minutes a week. That is low, but it moves the body. If it's and walking, the two best tools in exercise are a good pair of shoes. And get outside. Now we've got hot summertime. Only walk cool of the morning or late evening, but exercise. And then if you're an exercise bulimic, you're going to have to get someone to help you with the exercise where you're not over-exercising. And so many of them stop and don't do anything, and that's not good. So you're going to have to get somewhere in the middle. Seek, like I've already said, but seek mental help. You need medical, but the medical people will take you just so far. You need mental help, but make sure that they are trained in eating disorders, because many of your eating disorder people suffer from depression, lots of anxiety, panic attacks, issues with self-esteem, issues with boundary failure, and body image. Get with a team that can help you in all of these. For teenagers, and if any parent is listening out there, you must be involved in your child's treatment. This is not just for a treatment team and the kid. You must get the family involved. We've worked with some, we don't treat adolescents now, but we have done some on a private basis, and done 4 days with them, and have seen some remarkable results. But you got to have that family in there with those teenagers and kids, and it's amazing the progress that we have seen. One of the things is use affirmations. We teach people to use affirmations all the time. Write yourself 50 very simple affirmations. I don't ask clients to do anything that I haven't done. And when I say simple, not over 3 words. And those affirmations are really not about your doing, It is about I am beautiful, I am healthy, I am, you get it's I am. And they're hard to say to yourself because we feel all self-centered and get embarrassed. But write 50 affirmations, short ones, and look in the mirror in the white part of your eye. The dark part of your eye. I've given this 1,000 million. The dark part of your eye, and read those affirmations to yourself. Do that, and you're going to say, oh, I don't have time to do that. It doesn't take any time to read 50 affirmations to yourself. So do that 5 times a day for 2 weeks and see if there's a change, and let me know. I have seen people make complete turnarounds. because we get to where we hate our bodies and we want to live from the neck up and forget from the neck down. So affirmations is good. Affirming your body is good. Now this, and I'm going to not spend a lot of time on it, this movement for body positivity, and I've been accused of not liking that movement, I'm for anything that will help a person, but for someone 300, 400, 500 pounds, accept the fact that their body is okay the way it is. Great. If you want it like that, do it. I'm talking about the physical and the mental and emotional repercussions of having that excess weight. I do agree that you need to use your body to the very best of your ability, and if your body can't, if you can't use your body, if it doesn't do the things that a body needs to do, you can be positive about it until hell freezes over, but you're still going to die from obesity. You are, that's a fact. Now they have quit saying, and I can buy into this, they quit saying body positivity, and they've gone to saying body neutrality. Just be neutral about your body. Now, what I say is begin to love your body where it is. And I think that's probably some of the theory of the body positivity. I don't know. But start loving your body where it is. Do the affirmations. Rub lotion. And I had a sponsor that helped me do this. I hated my body so much. I hated to even comb my hair because I had to look in the mirror. I hated to shower. I hated to do anything about my body. And she had me to start rubbing lotion on my body. A good lotion, not just a cheapie. And so do those things for yourself while saying affirmations, because, we think with our brain and we feel with our heart. That is an 18-inch journey. And so we must include all of our senses in order to recover. And so use the affirmations and join a support group, and that is all I have. But I will tell you, people can recover. I made it sound so gloom and doom, and they are. Eating disorders are doom and gloom. And so many people who have eating disorders give up. They do not want to treat it, or they'll go and try to find another way to lose the weight. And I'll do this to lose weight. It's not about losing the weight. If you treat the whole person, the body will get to its proper size. I promise you. Just feed yourself like you would a baby. Or if you have, a lot of your eating disorder people, if you look around, they love their animals. They love a dog. They would no more restrict that dog from eating or overfeed them. Now, some of your compulsive overeaters, I had a dear friend that died of compulsive overeating, and her dog died of compulsive overeating because she fed him to death. So sometimes your compulsive overeaters will overfeed their animals, but most of the time, animal lovers take care of their animals better than they take care of themselves. So it sounds like I've done a lot of preaching. I'm just really, I was so severe in my eating disorder, and not one person ever, and I'm not faulting the medical people or therapists or anything. Back in those days, they didn't know. I went to doctors, psychiatrists, you name it, dietitians, and not one person says you have an eating disorder. It is called morbid obesity. And if you don't treat it, it will kill you. No, none of them ever said that. They'd hand me 1,000-calorie diet and say, here, and they would act embarrassed. The docs would act embarrassed at my size, and they just kind of look off and hand me 1,000-calorie diet and say, well, go on this and come back in 30 days and I'll weigh you. Well, if I could have done that, I already would have. So I'm not faulting doctors, but the medical team needs to catch up. The only medical people that are really focused on, that I know of, on treating eating disorders or obesity are the ones that's into doing the surgeries and the shots. It's a money making. People make billions of dollars off of us. So I have stopped preaching now, and so I'm going to open it up. Do any of you have anything to say? I usually allow more time, but I guess I just kind of got carried away because this is a subject near and dear to my heart. I had a daughter that almost died from anorexia and almost died from compulsive overeating and bulimia. So I know people can recover. We can recover. Who would like to speak?